Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us here on Go Local Live in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Arizona State University's Walter Cronkite Journalism Program and Mass Communications recently launched a collaborative lab to help increase public engagement and improve news literacy. The director and co-founder of the News Co Lab is joining us on Skype. I'd like to welcome Dan Gillmor. Thanks so much for being with us, Dan.
Glad to be with you.
I appreciate you joining us. Dan is a professor of digital media at Arizona State, and you might know him for his published works in The Guardian, as well as many other news organizations. He's also the author of Media Active and We the Media. So, Dan, there's been a relationship with Arizona State and Facebook going back over the year through the Facebook Journalism Project. And you guys have been working to establish stronger ties between Facebook and the news industry through this collaborative process. Talk to us a little bit about how this whole program started.
It started for real after the election. I should preface this by pointing out that for a long time I've been one of the people who's been extremely skeptical of giant technology companies becoming the default places where we have conversations. That I think that the aggregation of everything into a few companies is not a really good thing, and that we should be working for more competition. So that's an area where Facebook and I let's just say, don't agree. After the election, I knew some people at Facebook, and it's, whatever I've thought about it, it's a brilliant company with brilliant people. I posted something after the election saying that I thought that the big tech platforms had to get involved with news literacy, media literacy, helping the users of media, the demand side of the supply-demand equation, get better at knowing the difference between truth and lies, and that if we didn't solve this on the demand side, we would never fix it on the supply side. So someone I knew at Facebook got in touch, and we started talking, and that led to a meeting in March at the Cronkite School. We called it the News Literacy Working Group, and brought together people from around the world. It was a remarkable collection of educators in media literacy, news literacy program people, technology companies, not just Facebook, but others too, researchers, data researchers, and journalists, of course, and some people who fund these kinds of things. And we came out with a whole great list of ideas and suggestions. And over the last few months, we continued to talk about things we could do on the demand side, keeping in mind, of course, that supply and demand are now really intertwined in a social media era. And recently, Facebook became the first funder of this news collab that we're starting, and the News Integrity Initiative, which is a collective funding from Facebook, Craig Newmark Foundation, Knight Foundation, and others, also has contributed. We have several more announcements coming soon from other funders. And our goal really is to work with everybody, from journalists to teachers, librarians, technology people, and others, to try and help make this notion of news literacy scale, get really big. Because, as I said, I think we have to work hard on this part of it in order to have a holistic solution to a really giant problem.
I think it's becoming not only a giant problem, but becoming a larger and larger problem by the day. You just mentioned now that whole supply and demand notion. You've mentioned in publications several times before, writing on the idea that we need to improve news literacy, that it's not just up to journalists to improve this idea of false news, but it's up to that demand side, that consumers need to improve their news literacy. So when they're going to consume news, they need to be educated on it. How do we improve that?
Well, we need a lot of help. We start with ourselves. We should be, when we ask who's responsible for this, one of the first places we should look is in the mirror, because we're human and willing to often be fooled by things that are wrong. But we can make this stuff scale, go broadly in a couple of ways. And that one would be more universal teaching at all levels of education of these principles, which start with critical thinking. That's where it all starts. But we could also, and I hope we will, have the help of the news media themselves, which unaccountably, for the last however many years we can go back, have not been leaders in bringing this to their communities. I wish they had. I think the problem would be a lot less bad if news organizations had made this part of the mission. But they haven't, and we're going to work with some in the next few months and years, I hope, to start bringing that more into what they do. And of course, the tech industry has a huge role in doing this, but in the end, it's effectively up to us. We have to upgrade ourselves, and lots of people can help.
Working to make that change possible. So as digital, and your expertise is in digital media continues to grow and more people are consuming news through non-traditional methods. According to data from the Pew Research Center, 43% of Americans report getting their news online. Do you think the industry is slow to respond to consumers changing their habits?
Well, I am more digital these days than I used to be, but keep in mind I came from a basically ink-stained
old school
newspaper, old school background. Though I've liked and used technology for a long time. I studied programming in high school and had a personal computer in the 1970s, so I've been in this area for a long time. But the news industry, the traditional news industry, for lots of reasons, some perfectly sensible, some kind of ridiculous, was slow to adapt to not the idea of online. In fact, news organizations went online pretty quickly once this was available to them, and have used the tools to do better journalism in more and more ways. The business issues were tougher, and that's really at the heart of why the news industry as a business has been crumbling a lot in the last decade or two.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's what's almost frightening about this is daily reporters and journalists are fighting for credibility because we're seeing a state of false news or fake news. We're seeing a business being made of it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Journalists are out there fighting for credibility as people out there are reporting for profit. How do we change the current state of that? And is that part of what the News Collab is trying to figure out?
Well, let me. The answer to the last question is yes, and I'll explain in a minute what I hope we'll be doing. But I have to point out that misinformation is not new. The methods of delivery and of spreading it are evolving in the world we're in, but it's not a new phenomenon. It's been around as long as there's been media.
That's very
true. If you walk by a checkout stand in the supermarket anytime during the last 50 years, perhaps until recently, you would see next to the stand these newspapers. They were, they were newspapers, but they had stories like, the alien love child of George Bush, and all sorts of ridiculous stuff that was sometimes close enough to true that people would get fooled by it. So this, again, not new. The issue today is how many new channels there are not so much traditional kinds of channels, but methods of spreading stuff. And it isn't just financial. I think that the tech / media companies could stamp out for-profit misinformation. Not stamp it out completely, but they could reduce the incentive, and they're working on that. What they can't do easily, and this is a much tougher problem for them, is reduce the stuff that people do because of ideology and because of wanting to just mess with the system, to make people distrust truth and distrust reality and come up with their own narrative of the world, or one that supports previously held beliefs. This is really tough problem to solve, and to go into where we're heading. Our first project is going to be a pilot with the McClatchy newspaper company, which has properties around the country, and we're going to work with them in their newsrooms in 3 cities to start, but also working with the communities, people in the communities and institutions, to see if we can find ways to sort of elevate the information ecosystem in a way that does increase and enhance this news awareness or news literacy, whatever we want to call it, so that the people in the community will have better information the information they can trust for the right reasons, namely that it's true, and that it will help, I hope, everyone involved improve this ecosystem in a way that will be beneficial for the whole community, including the journalists. I hope this will be great for them.
I think it is a fascinating approach, working with not only journalists, but working with the community, working with news organizations, but then again, reaching out to community members as well, and getting that feedback. As a journalism student at Arizona State University a little while ago, I wish I would have had that opportunity to get some insight and feedback on that. Although I don't know if it would have been a problem back then. I don't know if I would have foreseen this coming. You know, things change at a rapid pace with technology always evolving. And social media being, kind of that double-edged sword. You get the opportunity and availability of stories, being able to news gather in new and exciting ways. But then again, those misinformation spreading, it's again a double-edged sword. So
yeah, I should mention, you mentioned the Cronkite School. One of the exciting partners we have for this project is Cronkite News, which is the student run with professional editor type faculty that they are now the news arm of Arizona Public Broadcasting. And it's a big operation. They do all kinds of news and information on every platform you can think of, including television. And we're going to be, to some degree, using Cronkite News as a test bed for some of our ideas, and working with students and faculty and others. I can't wait to get started on that.
Well, hopefully, Dan, you will keep us in the loop, because, again, this is an exciting opportunity, again, also to work with tech giant Facebook to see and hopefully give them some research and information as well to help them squash the misinformation being spread on their social media platform, because, like we said, more and more people getting their news from these tech giants. So I'd like to thank Dan Gillmor for joining us today to talk about the new collaborative lab at Arizona State University in the Cronkite School and Mass Communication School at Walter Cronkite School. So everyone, please hang tight as we wrap things up here on Go Local Live.